Davy Crockett was born on August 17, 1786, in a small cabin near the Nolichucky River in what is now Tennessee. His family was poor, like many frontier families. They did not live in towns or cities. They lived on land that was still wild, forested, and full of animals, rivers, storms, and dangers. Life was not quiet or settled. It was a daily struggle to survive. The land shaped the people who lived there, and it shaped Davy Crockett from the beginning. His father, John Crockett, was a veteran of the American Revolutionary War. He tried to run taverns, mills, and farms, but nothing lasted long in the rugged frontier. Settlers had to build everything with their hands. They hunted their own food. They defended their land themselves. There were no police, no armies nearby. Only strength, courage, and skill kept a family alive. Davy grew up in this world. From a very young age, Davy learned how to track animals. He studied footprints on dirt, learned how to move silently through thick forests, and understood how the wind could carry your scent to a deer. These skills became part of him. He did not learn them from books. He learned them by living in nature every day. When Davy was 8 years old, his father made him work. The frontier did not allow childhood to be soft. He learned to chop wood, fix fences, gather food, and hunt smaller animals with traps. At age 12, he received his first rifle. This was not a toy, it was a tool for survival. With it, he helped feed the family. School was something Davy never experienced fully. He tried attending, but it did not last. One winter, Davy fought with an older student who had bullied him. The bully was bigger, stronger, and older. At first Davy took the beating. But the next day, he returned again, and again, until the older boy finally backed down. Davy learned something that became part of his reputation for life. He might lose a fight, but he would never quit one. But after the fight, Davy feared punishment from the schoolmaster. He was young, and instead of facing the consequences, he ran away. Not home, but into the wilderness. He traveled alone, through cold forests and icy streams, sleeping in barns and helping farmers for food. He spent nearly 3 years wandering like this. He grew older, stronger, tougher, and more skilled than boys his age. He returned home only when he was nearly 16, not as a boy but as a frontier man. His father barely recognized him at first, but when he spoke, the family knew it was Davy. He came back not defeated, but more confident, more experienced, and more capable than ever. During these years, settlers often faced conflict with native tribes. Crockett grew up in a time when white settlers and indigenous nations struggled for land. This shaped his life deeply, though later in life, Crockett would be one of the few frontier heroes who openly defended Native American rights, refusing to support mistreatment and forced removal. But that belief came later, built from what he witnessed growing up. When Davy turned 19, he married Mary Polly Finley, a kind and strong frontier girl. They started a family, living in a small cabin, raising children in the same rugged land. Crockett worked as a hunter, tracker, and scout. He sold animal skins to make money and traveled long distances through deep forests. His reputation as a marksman grew fast. People said he could shoot a squirrel from a tree without marking the meat, just hitting the head cleanly. But life brought hardship. Polly died young, leaving Davy a widower with children to care for. This loss struck him deeply. The frontier could give, and it could take away just as quickly. But Davy did not break. He married again, to Elizabeth Patton, a widow who also had children. Together, they formed a new family, strong and united. By now, Davy Crockett was known across Tennessee as a hunter and leader. He had courage, humor, and the ability to inspire people. When he spoke, others listened. He did not pretend to be more than he was. He spoke plainly, directly, and honestly. People trusted him. That is how his journey into public life began. The boy of the wilderness was becoming something more. a voice for the frontier people who had none. As the frontier continued to expand, conflict grew between the United States and Native American nations. Many settlers were pushing west, and the U.S. government wanted to control more land. The Creek War, 1813 to 1814, became one of the defining conflicts of the era. It was part of a larger struggle during the War of 1812, but on the southern frontier it was deeply personal. Families, towns, and settlements were caught in violence. Davy Crockett did not join the militia for glory or political ambition. He joined because it was his duty to protect his family, his neighbors, and his land. The frontier was not protected by the National Army. It relied on its own people, hunters, settlers, and farmers, to defend it. When the call came, Crockett stepped forward. He became a scout and hunter for the militia. This was not a glamorous role. Scouts moved ahead of the main force, often alone or with a small group. They followed tracks, listened for movement in the forest, and tried to understand where danger was coming from. A scout's life was silent, watchful, and always at the edge of risk. One mistake could mean ambush. Crockett was good at this work. He had lived in the woods since childhood. He could read broken twigs, disturbed leaves, and distant echoes the way other men read letters on a page. Commanders trusted him. More importantly, the soldiers trusted him. They knew he would not lead them into danger blindly. During the campaign, the militia suffered from hunger, rain, sickness, and long marches. Battles were sudden and brutal, fought at close range with rifles, knives, and tomahawks. Crockett did not seek to kill for reputation. He fought to protect his comrades. Many men followed him because he stayed calm when others panicked. He helped wounded men get to safety. He shared food even when he had little for himself. His courage was not loud, it was steady. When the war ended, Crockett returned home. He did not boast about his service. He simply went back to work, hunting and providing for his family. But his reputation had grown. He had been tested, and the frontier had seen his character. By now, Crockett understood something important. The frontier people had needs, voices, and hardships, but the government in the East did not understand them. Many leaders in cities did not know what it meant to fight a winter storm for food. They did not know what it meant to clear land with bare hands. They did not understand the dangers of the frontier. Crockett saw that the people needed a representative who spoke like them, lived like them, and understood their lives. So when local elections came, neighbors encouraged him to run. He did not dress up. He did not speak with fancy words. He simply stood before the people and spoke honestly about roads, land, taxes, and protecting rights. And they chose him. In 1817, Davy Crockett became a public official, first a justice of the peace, then a town commissioner, and later a member of the Tennessee state legislature. His political rise was not built on wealth or education. It was built on trust. Crockett traveled from settlement to settlement, speaking with farmers, hunters, and families. He listened to their struggles. He understood their fight to survive. He brought their concerns to the government. He didn't try to impress the rich class. He stood for ordinary people. This made him different, and people noticed. As he moved from local government to the U.S. House of Representatives, he carried the frontier with him to Washington, D.C. He walked into halls of polished marble wearing the clothing of a man who lived in forests, not cities. Some mocked him. Some underestimated him. But when Crockett spoke, he spoke with honesty and conviction. He defended what he believed was right, especially when it came to protecting people from government power. This would lead him into the greatest political battle of his life, against one of the most powerful presidents in American history. And it was this battle, not hunting, not war, not the wilderness, that would decide Davy Crockett's legacy. By the late 1820s, Davy Crockett had become well known across Tennessee and beyond. He was respected not because he was wealthy or highly educated, but because he spoke plainly and stood for the common people. In Washington, he was seen as something unusual, a man who had come from the wilderness, who still wore hunting clothes, and who refused to pretend to be someone he was not. But the most defining moment of his political life was his conflict with President Andrew Jackson. At first, Crockett admired Jackson. Jackson was a war hero, a tough frontier general who had fought alongside men like Crockett against the British and during the Creek War. Many people saw Jackson as a champion of the common man. However, once Jackson became president, Crockett began to see a different side of him. Jackson wanted to expand American territory aggressively, especially in the South, where valuable land was held by Native American nations such as the Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, and Choctaw. Jackson supported a plan called the Indian Removal Act, a law that would force Native families from their lands and relocate them westward, even if they had treaties guaranteeing their territory. The government wanted the land for farming, settlement, and political control. Many people supported the policy, arguing it was necessary for growth. Davy Crockett did not. He had grown up around native people and understood that they had lived on the land long before American settlers arrived. He believed that the government was breaking promises, and that breaking promises was dishonorable. When the Indian Removal Act was introduced in Congress in 1830, many representatives were afraid to oppose Jackson. Jackson was powerful, popular, and known for eliminating his enemies. Speaking against him could end a career. But Crockett stood up anyway. He rose in the chamber and spoke. "I would rather be honestly defeated than dishonestly victorious." He said the government had no right to force people from their homes, no matter their race. He said treaties should be honored. He said power should not be used to crush the weak. Members of Congress were shocked. Some were impressed. Others were furious. But one thing was certain: Crockett was no longer on Jackson's side. This decision cost Crockett politically. He lost support from powerful politicians. Newspapers that supported Jackson mocked him. Some tried to portray him as a joke, a wild backwoods hunter who knew nothing about government. But the common people, farmers, pioneers, workers, respected him more than ever. They saw that he refused to be controlled. Even when he lost his seat in Congress, he did not change his beliefs. He ran again, and won again, because people trusted him. They knew he wouldn't betray them. But the break with Jackson was final. Crockett said, "I am at perfect liberty to vote as my conscience and judgment dictates to be right." He stood alone if he had to. However, the political world is rarely kind to men who stand alone. Over time, Jackson's allies worked to remove Crockett from office permanently. In 1835, Crockett lost his seat again, and this time he knew the fight was over. In anger and disappointment, he spoke words that became legendary. "You may all go to hell, and I will go to Texas." This was not just frustration. It was a declaration of new purpose. Crockett did not leave as a defeated man. He left as a man looking for new opportunity, new land, and a new beginning. Texas was a frontier even wilder than Tennessee had been in Crockett's youth. It was a place where people were fighting for independence from Mexico. It was a place where courage was needed, and where Crockett believed he could make a difference. So he packed his rifle, said goodbye to his home, and headed west. The next chapter of his life would be the one that turned him from a hero into a legend. In the winter of 1835, after losing his final election, Davy Crockett made his decision. He would leave Tennessee behind and head for Texas. It was not a small choice. Tennessee was where he had been born, where he had hunted, where he had fought, where he had raised his family. But Crockett was not the kind of man to stay where he was no longer useful. He needed a new frontier, a place where a man could start again. At this time, Texas was part of Mexico, but thousands of settlers from the United States had moved there. Tension was growing between these settlers and the Mexican government. The settlers wanted more freedom, but the Mexican authorities demanded control. Conflict was rising, and revolution was brewing. Crockett saw Texas as a land of possibility. It was dangerous, but danger had always shaped him. The wilderness was where he belonged. He gathered a small group of friends and fellow frontiersmen, men who trusted him, men who believed in his judgment. Before leaving, he told the people of his hometown, "I told the people of my district that I would serve them as faithfully as I had done, but if not, they might go to hell, and I would go to Texas." The words were simple, direct, confident, just like Crockett himself. The trip to Texas was long and rough. Roads were muddy or didn't exist at all. The winter wind cut through clothes and skin. They slept outdoors most nights. But Crockett led the group with patience and humor. He encouraged them when conditions were harsh and made jokes when spirits dropped. Along the journey, settlers invited him into their homes. They recognized him from stories: the hunter with the coonskin cap, the congressman who stood up to Andrew Jackson. Everywhere he went, crowds gathered to hear him speak. He did not talk like a politician. He spoke like a neighbor. He played his fiddle, told stories from the frontier, and brought laughter wherever he stopped. When he crossed into Texas, he saw a land that was both rich and wild: open prairies stretching to the horizon, deep forests full of game, rivers moving like silver through the land. This was the kind of world Crockett understood. It was the kind of place a man could build a new life. Crockett reached the town of Nacogdoches in January 1836. He met with Texian leaders who were preparing to fight for independence for Mexico. They welcomed him. They knew who he was. His reputation as a frontiersman and soldier made him valuable. He was offered land and a position in the Texian army. But Crockett did not rush into command. He waited. He listened. He wanted to understand the situation clearly. He was cautious, not reckless. Soon, orders came. Mexican forces under General Santa Anna were moving to crush the Texian resistance. One of the most important defensive positions was a mission-turned-fort called the Alamo, located in San Antonio. The defenders there needed men. They needed fighters. They needed courage. And so, Davy Crockett rode to the Alamo. When Crockett and his men arrived in early February 1836, they found the Alamo in poor condition. The walls were damaged. Supplies were limited. The defenders were outnumbered. Commanders James Bowie and William B. Travis were trying to organize a defense, but everyone knew the situation was desperate. Crockett did not hesitate. He walked in calmly, rifle slung over his shoulder, coonskin cap on his head. The men recognized him immediately. Some cheered. Others simply nodded, understanding what his presence meant. Hope. He did not act above anyone. He worked beside the men, repairing walls, gathering firewood, helping set up defensive positions. At night, he told stories to keep spirits up. His humor, courage, and steadiness made the men stronger. He was not a commander by rank, but he was a leader by character. The defenders numbered around 180. Santa Anna's army marching toward them numbered more than 1,800. The men of the Alamo knew that surrender was unlikely. Escape was possible, but dishonorable. And so, they prepared to stand. The final chapter of Davy Crockett's life, and the last stand at the Alamo, is where legend and history meet. This next section will be long, vivid, and deeply detailed, showing the siege day by day, Crockett's role, the atmosphere, the courage, and the final moments. When Davy Crockett entered the Alamo in February 1836, he entered not just a fort, but a moment in history that would define him forever. The Alamo was a former Spanish mission, built of thick stone walls and surrounded by open ground. It was not designed to withstand a major siege. The defenders knew it. Crockett knew it. But they also understood something more important. Courage is not measured by odds. It is measured by resolve. On February 23, 1836, the Mexican army led by General Santa Anna reached San Antonio. Red flags were raised, the signal that no quarter would be given. No mercy. No prisoners. The message was clear. Surrender or die. Inside the Alamo, there were fewer than 200 defenders. Outside, Santa Anna commanded over 1,800 troops, well-trained and well-equipped. Cannons were rolled into position. Drums beat. Dust filled the air. The siege had begun. For 13 days, the defenders endured bombardment. Cannon fire shook the walls. Smoke filled the air. Food was limited. Water was rationed. Sleep was nearly impossible. Yet morale did not break. During the long nights, Crockett played his fiddle to lift spirits. Men gathered around fires, exhausted, listening in silence. For a few moments, the war faded, and the music reminded them of home. He also took turns holding the outer walls. Crockett and his Tennessee riflemen were expert marksmen. They climbed onto the battlements and fired carefully, wasting no ammunition. Each shot was deliberate. Each bullet counted. The defenders were not reckless. They were disciplined and determined. On February 24th, the young commander William B. Travis wrote a letter asking for reinforcements. It ended with the words, "Victory or death." Davy Crockett supported that message. He did not encourage surrender. He did not plan to escape. He believed that standing meant more than surviving. In one recorded moment, Crockett reportedly told the men, "We are going to die here, make peace with that. But we will leave a memory that will live long after we are gone." The men understood. This was no ordinary battle. This was a stand for honor. On March 6th, in the dark early hours before sunrise, Santa Anna launched the final assault. Drums beat. Trumpets sounded. Thousands of soldiers advanced in waves. The defenders rushed to the walls. Crockett and his riflemen took positions and began firing with deadly accuracy. The first assault wave broke. The second came. Then the third. Mexican troops used ladders to scale the walls. Cannon fire blasted openings. Smoke turned the air black. The battle became close, brutal, and physical. Inside the courtyard, men fought with rifles, pistols, knives, and bare hands. Crockett's men formed a line, protecting the weak points. They did not fall back. They did not surrender. They stood. One by one, the defenders were overwhelmed. James Bowie was killed in his sickbed, fighting with pistols. Travis fell near the north wall. The courtyard was filled with smoke, fire, and shouts. Davy Crockett and a small group of survivors continued fighting near the chapel. When ammunition ran out, they used their rifles as clubs. They fought until they could no longer stand. They fought with the resolve of men who understood that courage has meaning beyond survival. There are differing historical records of the final moments. Some say Crockett died fighting. Others say he was captured and executed shortly after. But all accounts share one truth. He faced the end without fear. The Alamo fell. The defenders died. But their stand ignited something far greater. The news of the Alamo spread across the United States. People were not discouraged. They were inspired. "Remember the Alamo" became the cry of the Texas Revolution. It fueled new armies. It led to victory at San Jacinto. It helped win Texas independence. Davy Crockett did not live to see it, but his sacrifice helped make it possible. He did not become a legend because he lived without fear, but because when the moment came, he chose honor over life. When the smoke cleared and the Alamo was silent, Davy Crockett's body lay among the fallen. There were no triumphant speeches, no grand ceremonies, no songs. Just silence, ashes, and the memory of the men who had stood when retreat would have been easy. But legends are not born in comfort. They are born in moments where the world is watching, and a man chooses honor. When the story of the Alamo spread across America, it did not bring sorrow alone, it brought fire. "Remember the Alamo" became more than a war cry. It became a promise that courage matters, that sacrifice echoes, that freedom has a price. Thousands volunteered to join the fight for Texas. Towns shouted Crockett's name. Newspapers printed his final stand. Mothers told their children that courage was not something you talk about. It is something you do. But something else happened, something only time can do. Davy Crockett began to transform into a symbol. Stories were told of him wrestling bears with his bare hands, shooting rifles from impossible distances, laughing in the face of danger. Some of these stories were exaggerated. Some were invented. But the reason they spread was simple. People needed a hero. And Crockett felt real, because before he was a legend, he was a man. A hunter. A soldier. A storyteller. A father. A man who lost elections but never lost his voice. He wasn't born famous. He earned his way into history. Over the decades, politicians tried to use Crockett's legacy for their own purposes. Some painted him as a symbol of American expansion. Some used him as a frontier dream mascot. But beneath all of that, the truth endured. Davy Crockett was a man who believed in standing up to power, even when power looked unstoppable. He opposed laws he thought were wrong. He refused to be silent, even when it cost him his seat in Congress and his secure future. He didn't go to Texas to conquer land. He went because he couldn't stand being part of something unjust. That is not myth. That is history. In schools, his name is still spoken. Statues stand in his honor. Books are written, films are made, stories are retold. But his real memory is not stone or ink. It is in the idea that one person can make a stand, even when the enemy is stronger. The world says, "Give up," and survival seems impossible. His life whispers a message, just as powerful now as it was then. Do what is right, even when you stand alone. Davy Crockett did not live to see victory. He did not return home. He did not grow old. But he left something greater than a lifetime. He left a story that becomes strength in the hearts of those who hear it. A story of independence, courage, principle, and the unshakable belief that one person can make a difference. Davy Crockett did not just die at the Alamo. He rose from it, as a legend, as a symbol, as a reminder that honor is worth everything.